What's up, guys? It's producer Justin. Just letting you know that we're doing a rebroadcast today. We had a few things arise, so enjoy this episode, one of our most downloaded episodes, with JD Gleason about the 6.4 Powerstroke.
Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
You're listening to the Diesel Performance Podcast. Chris, we want to talk a little bit about buying stuff on Craigslist. Are people still using Craigslist?
I mean, I still do. Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace is another big one that I'm starting to use.
That is the one that I think I do most of my used shopping on.
Yeah. I just had a recent vehicle that I sold by a Craigslist ad. So the guy saw it on Craigslist, would not actually reach out to me because Craigslist, there's a lot of scamming going on right now.
Right.
And then he ended up finding my ad on Facebook, looked me up, actually downloaded and listened to our podcast.
Oh.
And that's how he called me.
Oh.
Really, really weird. So that was cool. This past weekend I went and I was our customer back at the shop.
Okay.
So I am the new proud owner of a 300,000 mile crew cab short bed LB7.
Clapped the fuck. I haven't even seen. I saw a picture. It looked halfway nice, but I just can't believe that you bought a nice vehicle.
It's going to be a good work truck for someone. I bought it. So one of the things I do on the side is I buy vehicles, fix them up, sell them.
It's going to be a nice work truck for someone. That's all the description I need. One owner, adult driven.
So, I got, like I said, a crew cab. It doesn't run. Got a bunch of paperwork for parts. Had one of my buddies who's a tech, not going to mention names, come out, look at it. Literally right before this recording, I went and ordered a couple parts. They'll be here this week. Kind of, play with some stuff, try to see if we can get it running. We actually had it running last night already.
Okay.
But it needs like a fuel filter head. The general LB7 stuff. We're going to get a pump, put a pump in it. We're going to do a fuel filter head, run some new fuel lines, things like that.
I love it.
But it's a cool, it's a cool project. It's funny because a customer calls in or an end user calls in and they're like, oh, I'm having this problem with their truck. And I can spit the game. Like, hey, you touch this, you check these things. I'm sitting there yesterday in my buddy's shop. I'm looking at my laptop, looking at my V2, looking at the truck, looking at him. He's like, so what do we do? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't know. I had to take a step back. But, it's fun. It's a learning experience. It's nice. I'm not a mechanic. I don't wrench on anything. I mean, I've worked on a couple of my own stuff, but it's nice to tinker and, kind of play around. And, it's a gamble. I am money out on a truck that now I have to invest my time into to potentially get my money back out.
And more money. Right.
And more money, yeah. But it's cool. You know what? It's one of those things. Work hard, take a risk. It's all part of it. I've been doing this for years. Before I worked for Nick, this is what I did for a couple of years. I didn't have a job.
Yeah, you were a bum. I remember. Yeah, homeless.
I was not a bum.
Right.
I had a badass second gen.
I saw you begging for change with it.
Yeah. It's nice to go back to my roots. I have the free time. I like to utilize it, and it's a hobby of mine. At the same time, it's productive. Better than going to the bar drinking.
So I don't know about that, but it's fun.
I mean,
nonetheless.
I'm not broke. Well, debatable, but we'll see.
Right. Again, fun nonetheless.
And it was cool because then I was able to take my 15. I bought our old shop truck,
right
from Nick,
box.
the Ram box. So it has the emissions still on
Come
it.
Daddy.
Come Daddy, yes. Next month the new plates come in. Nick's
not
not going to be happy with that.
You're such a dork.
Yeah. So the Come Daddy, as I call it, it's got an ATS compound set up on it. We've done a drive along in it.
Yeah. Great truck.
The truck, I just want to point out, a lot of guys, I made a post on Instagram and Facebook about guys that think they need to delete the truck or any of the trucks.
Yeah, did you get some hate for that? I read that comment.
Dude, it was actually I don't have a million followers or anything. I have a couple thousand followers, this and that. But the likes and the people that commented, it was actually positive. People are actually inquiring, got a couple PMs, guys asking how the truck operated, regeneration intervals, things like that. Educated questions.
Yeah.
So it's cool to kind of be in a truck that's kind of in the forefront of that. It is my daily driver. I put 20,000 miles on that truck in this last year.
Damn.
So between traveling and just driving it every day.
Yep.
But, drove to Chicago, which from my house, it's about an hour and a half drive with, our bumper pull trailer, loaded this truck up. You didn't even feel 8,000 pounds, 8,500 pounds behind you. The truck it towed like a dream. So, it's just really cool to kind of be part of that.
Letter 8.
Yeah, man.
Love it.
Speaking of
new stuff going on at the shop.
Yeah.
You got new trucks. We got some new new trucks over in the shop.
So this is kind of one of those Craigslist ordeals all over again. There was a video that you had published last week through the Duramax Tuner, or a couple weeks when this airs, from the Duramax Tuner page.
Well, we did. So for our listeners, we did the Humvee ride along.
Yep.
Where that's what we're talking about. The LBZ Allison swapped into the
Hummer.
Humvee.
Yep.
Now that truck, somebody else had built it. A customer built it.
Yep.
Blair Outland of XI Diesel or usedh1.com.
And we've done some interviews with some of his employees on Conversion Month.
Conversion Month. That's right.
Or was that last year? That was this year.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
It was a time.
It was a while
It was
ago.
a time in the past.
So yeah, I mean,
so we had that truck in. Now we had a lot of fun with that truck.
It was
we
cool.
got to take it off roading. We got to take it drag racing. We got to do burnouts on the street.
Yes.
Although none of those made it to the video, I noticed.
No.
But yeah, so we did get to have a lot of fun with that truck. So much fun that somebody got caught up in the fever of the Humvee conversion.
So just for starters, Nick Prignitz, Duramax Tuner Calibrated Powers owner, he's been wanting to build one for a while. Like, he's got a soft spot for Hummers. He's got a soft spot for like just military stuff in general, I feel, and just weird out of whack stuff.
I've had a few M2 conversations with him that I thought were just, why are we talking about this?
So anytime he needs Craigslist, eBay negotiations, he usually weasels me into something somehow, some way.
Weasels the weasel.
Weasels the weasel. I am the fucking gopher. So yeah, long story short, did a deal. We ended up picking up a 95 hardtop wagon.
Hummer.
Right. Super badass. We have it in the shop already. We're in the process of disassembly.
I got some really good video on it today.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a little different than the camo Hummer that we have at the shop, Blair's.
I was just going to mention here. So when we initially got the Humvee from Blair, everybody kept saying that this was military dressed and civilian dressed, and I really didn't know the difference. I rode around in some H2s and H3s in my life,
and those to me were civilian dressed.
That's what I thought civilian dressed was. I thought they just meant a whole new generation. Yeah. No. Hummer had a civilian dressed version.
H1, and that's essentially what we have. So it has all the amenities. It's kind of like a loaded 95, if you will.
I love that, a loaded 95.
Yeah, I mean, it has really nice interior. It's got a full sound system, carpet, sound deadening. Like, it's the real deal. The guy that we got it from, so the truck came out of the Northeast. Yep. It was used for off-roading. It shows it. I mean, it's no show queen. It's a Hummer, for crying out loud. But we are dismantling the whole thing. It had a naturally aspirated 6.2 in it. And we're gonna put a built LBZ motor in it. So we're gonna do
allegedly.
Yeah, no. The final go ahead.
Did you get the donor truck yet?
We're not doing a donor truck. We actually have everything already at the shop. So harness and everything that's needed to kind of do the conversion on top of the conversion kit that we're going to be getting from Pila Motorsports.
Oh, Adam.
The plan here is to kind of build a truck similar to what Blair's truck was, essentially. Yeah. Maybe a little more fuel, a little more power, a little more never hurts. But it'll host like our Stealth 67 VVT, which is a nice test bed.
We've gone back and forth about the plans for this truck.
Yeah,
Chris and I have. I had some different ideas of where we should go with it. Chris had some valid points
of different, and you did too. I for starters, guys, I never give Paul credit. I try not to.
Which is a good idea. Yeah.
But the original game plan that we had, I mean, let's face it, our shop and the resources that we have access to, we could probably make anything happen or within reason,
Yeah. If it's possible, we could do it.
But we need to do something that is going to inspire end users, something that's going to be like, damn, that's cool, and some of the practicality around some of the conversions that we were talking about just really wasn't there. I mean, what conversion is practical? Not many, but, again, within reason.
Right.
So, yeah.
Can you feel the tension, listeners? No, I'm just joking. So Chris and I have gone back and forth on this. We both had some valid points about what we wanted out of it, and I think we've settled kind of somewhere in the middle, or realistic. Nick has settled somewhere in the middle throughout all of this. What's really awesome is we're going to be able to get to document this as we go forward, so you guys will be hearing updates through the podcast about this project. We also, of course, have the LBZ budget build that's now in our hands.
Yes.
Listeners, this is a really cool truck that Chris and I stumbled into now getting to run point on. We got a few months to do something with it, and we have legitimately no ideas.
Yeah.
So if you guys have ideas of what we should do with our LBZ budget build, that's our 4-door long bed,
Just
2006
2006 LBZ.
It's already set up for work stock sled pulling.
Or our Canadian listeners, LBZ.
LBZ.
Yep, there you go.
Way to be inclusive.
Hey, man. Just thinking here.
Staying PC around here.
Yeah.
Anyways, so if you guys have ideas of what we should do with that or what you guys would like to see go on that, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you guys. Give us some feedback about the LBZ. The Hummer project, feel free to send us your feedback, although I don't know where that'll go. It seems like there's another wind that's carrying that project along.
Here's the reality, right? So when a project that Duramax Tuner does, that's Nick's project. I'll just be very transparent.
Right.
Nick comes to us and gets feedback of what we think, but ultimately it's his decision.
Yeah.
The project, the budget build, as that's ultimately Nick's decision, we have more leverage because we go to Nick, hey, this is what we want to do. And then Paul's a sales guy, I'm a sales guy. We sell him on the value of him spending company money on that.
Yeah, I like to phrase that as we present him with great ideas and allow him to make the best decision.
Right, but we might lean one way more so than the other.
Absolutely. So we are looking for ideas on the LBZ budget build. If you guys got any ideas or something you want to see us do with that truck, or if there's an event you want to see us get that truck out to,
plan ahead.
We'd love to talk to you, man. Contact us now because 2018 gets scheduled by the end of January. 2019 gets scheduled by the end of January. We know where that truck is going to be all year. So get a hold of us on that. Chris, I did want to dive in. We did that Diesel Insights on Blair's Humvee.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen it, jump on YouTube, jump on Facebook. It's like 50,000 views on Facebook right now.
It's been really popular. My dad, who can barely use a fucking computer or a cell phone for crying out loud, he doesn't realize I text him. He's like, oh, I saw that video that you guys posted on my phone. I'm like, you follow our work page? He's like, yeah, on Facebook. I'm like, I didn't even know you had a Facebook, Dad. Cool. I tell you
the story about my dad was really proud when he was looking over the shoulder of somebody at Walmart and their grandkid was like, no, Grandma, you don't got to do that. You just hit the backspace button. Oh, yeah, no, he was as proud as a father could ever be of himself for learning that you could hit backspace in a text message.
Shut the fuck. You think it's a
It
typewriter?
explained so many text messages that I've gotten from him in the past. Where I was like,
that's
what
awesome.
the fuck are you sending? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good stuff. Big shout out, Dad, because you're
not going to listen to this.
We'll never figure out the technology to listen to a podcast. Right. Chuck. Speaking of technology, Exergy, forefront of performance engineering.
Common rail injection systems.
There you go. You said it, man.
Yeah, man.
Nailed it. Guys, you know we talk about Exergy in every episode, not only because they're the sponsor, one of our sponsors of the show, but also because we've worked with them forever. I think well before they ever agreed to a sponsorship, we were recommending Exergy. It's what we use in our vehicles. It's what we use in our customer vehicles. It's what we use in our shop vehicles. And that's because we can trust their consistency and also because we believe in their technology and their testing. And one of their things their testing kind of tends to point them towards is how do you make injectors last? And as winter approaches and cold start videos start, there's two things that we want to hit on for today's Exergy do's and don'ts. Chris, do you want the do or the don't?
You know what? I'll take the do, just because there's a couple stories that kind of pop up on me real quick.
Do it to it.
You know, guys, maybe the guys out in California, Florida, Texas, you're probably not dealing with the same type of weather us Midwestians are or East Coast guys. But weather's changing. The fuel and the additives that are being thrown into the fuel are changing. So your fuel mileage is going to tend to drop and things like that. Please don't call me about that. Please, please, please. But, you want to be careful here. If you're in a scenario like, you have a couple trucks and you don't drive them frequently and you have fuel from the summer, a summer blend, and it's now 30 degrees, 25 degrees out, and you go to drive the truck, it's probably going to gel up.
And to be clear, you're talking about the fuel and the additives from the pump, not your own additives.
And that's something we're going to touch on.
Yeah.
So the weather is changing. Maybe even if you don't have your full lifespan on your fuel filter, swap it out just to be proactive. Run the truck out of its fuel that's currently in there. If it's been sitting for a while, get some fresh fuel in there. One of the things I want to touch on is there was a local gentleman who grew up not far from me. He grew up next town over from me. And he actually works for one of the big fuel supply companies out in, right over the border in Wisconsin. And I had asked him, I was like, what do you do about additives, in the winter and this and that? And he was like, don't run them. And I'm like, well, why? Why wouldn't you run additives? And he brought out a couple of points that I had never even thought of. Different fuel companies that blend their own fuel will actually use an additive, right? They'll use a specific additive to blend their fuel for winter purpose.
Right.
Well, you go to the fuel pump station, right, and you fill it up, and there's like 2 or 3 like main additives out there. You go and you fill up. Let's say you add additive to your fuel. Let's say that additive is the opposite additive that was added to that fuel in the first place.
Right.
Chemical imbalance. It does a direct opposite of what you were initially anticipating it for you to do.
So you were looking to increase lubrication and have less viscosity, and because of the chemicals that were already blended in there,
trying
you're
to lower the gel temperature or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So the one thing that he told me, he was like, whatever fuel you get, he's like, be consistent. Just stick with those fuel stations, run that fuel, don't add any additive into the mix. He was like, that you would buy over the counter. He goes, and don't go to the cheapest place. So, make sure, again, just because it's 10 cents here, 20 cents here, stick to where you go.
Yeah.
Be high traffic fuel station, have you, whatever that looks like.
It's funny you bring this up, Chris. There's a lost episode of this podcast that we never got to publish where we interviewed the guys from a company called Amalgamated.
Yeah.
And they specialize in commercial grade and commercial volume of fuel additives. Most commonly around like fleets with 6 liters, right? And one of the things that they brought to our attention was that anything you can afford on the shelf at a gas station for diesel additive literally has to be watered down to the point that the chemistry in that bottle, so the actual chemicals in that bottle, the volume of it is so low, it's probably not worth the money.
Yeah. And
it's sad that that's kind of where the market has gone for that, because I know I've always been anecdotal about saying that, like, House always worked for me. Yeah. I run it all winter. I follow the instructions on the bottle.
Well, and
it's always worked for me. But that's not the same as proof, right?
I think
that's
what's funny,
anecdotal experience.
I think what's funny here is I want to touch on something, but I want you to handle the don't first, because this is all going to tie in together.
I love it. Okay, don't run 2-stroke oil, gasoline, or any other stupid ideas for additives. You're not increasing lubricity. You're not preventing gelling. What you're doing is ruining your injection system.
So we'll touch on, we'll stick with LB7, just because we talked about it in the beginning. It's very common for guys when they have hazing injectors that they'll add 2-stroke oil because their buddy at the local GM shop or
says it'll clear it
up.
The
dealer, whatever, says to do that.
You got to get the debris off of there.
Right. What that's doing is it is allowing for there to be less tolerance or movement within the injector pintle itself. Okay.
Yep.
And all it's doing is sealing up whatever the leakage or blockage is in the fuel. It's thickening up the fuel per se. Once the 2-stroke oil is out of the system, your injectors are still shit. It's not helping aid anything.
And they also reduce lubricity.
It does.
They don't increase lubricity. Don't believe what they tell you. Science proves it decreases lubricity.
Gasoline, same thing.
Yeah.
Guys will put gasoline.
So corrosive.
I've heard this so many times from like old school mechanical injection guys, like, oh, you're putting 30 gallons of diesel in your truck? Run a gallon or 2 of gasoline in there too. Gasoline's not going to gel, and that's the thought process in the wintertime. On a mechanical injected truck, you could probably get away with it.
Sure.
You get away with a lot of shit. I could probably put sand in the fucking fuel system and it would stay running. On a common rail system,
not happening.
I would stay the hell away from it and stay away from, there are going to be guys out there that, I blend my own fuel, whatever that biodiesel, whatever that is. Great. If it's working for you, do it. I'm not putting it in mine. I know the cost of the stuff. But one of the things, kind of doing with the do's and don'ts this episode is guys will call in and they'll ask me, what additive do you run? I don't. Well, what do? I keep my truck over a half a tank and I drive the truck.
Yeah.
I run fuel. I'm very specific with a couple stations, especially in the winter months. And I change my fuel filter, generally every 8,000-ish miles. Every few months I'm doing an oil change, I'll do a fuel filter. Fast does say, like we had a Fast rep here not long ago, and they say 30,000 miles.
Yeah.
You can go water separator and fuel filter. I am not going against anything that they say. I've always had Fast on my trucks.
Because you can go 30,000 doesn't mean I would.
Well, and generally the newer trucks, you can go 10,000 on an oil change. I usually do it every 4 or 5.
Right.
So, it's just one of those things where I'm going to practice what I preach, that kind of thing. I don't believe in additives. I don't run it in my own truck. I'm not going to challenge anyone to say something otherwise. If it works for you, keep that recipe going. All I know is I've owned diesels for 12 years. I've never not been able to make it to work because my shit won't start. And that's like my old school 7.3, my common rail, and mechanical injected 5.9s, and now the 6.7, and the plethora of TDIs my $1,500 budget beaters, baby. Love those things. So, I don't add additive. It works, and I'll continue to do that.
I dig it. All right. Well, speaking of another great company and a sponsor of the show, we're going to slide right on over to the WC Fab from Facebook segment of today's show. Slater Barefoot.
Okay.
Hi, I'm a big fan of the podcast. Was wondering if y'all have done a podcast about how to start your own diesel performance shop. I want to start my own in the future, but I have no idea where to start and how to get it going. Also, what connections would be great to have for a startup shop? And I think it would be cool if y'all talked about how to get into a diesel career on the podcast.
Man, that kind of hit home. That hits home for a lot of us. I
love it. I think we've hit on this like maybe in a segment before. So longtime listeners, you might have heard us kind of talk about this. I'm gonna tackle the career thing first. Number one, we love enthusiasts. This is one of those industries that formal education is really, really hard to come by because there's not a formal educator, a certification you can get in diesel performance. What you need to do is have a truck and get involved. You need to go to your local sled pulls, your local diesel drags, whatever the local diesel guys are doing. You really got to get involved in that crowd. You got to get involved in that industry. And you got to start being an enthusiast first, and then you can follow your passions. Now, some guys are going to be real obvious here and go after a mechanics degree. That makes a lot of fucking sense. Do it, man. Like you're still going to need a formal education to be a mechanic. But to get into like the diesel performance industry, you're going to need to match that kind of general formal education with some real world, personal, hands-on experience. That's what we're looking for a career. And that also goes in the sales department, in the marketing department, in the tuning department, every other department that's around
as
being
you're
a mechanic.
talking about the formation of our shop, for an example.
Yeah.
I mean, guys that I work with, end users, or guys that had a couple buddies and, they wanted to start selling tunes or selling turbos. It was a word of mouth thing. They were enthusiasts. They knew hands-on how the truck, the properties worked, how the truck's mechanical side of things came together.
Right.
And they were able, to kind of work off something. And there are guys that you and I can think of right now that we've worked with for the last 5, 6, 7 years that have turned into having shops.
Well, let's talk about the sponsor of this segment, Jason Worley, who for some years when he started his operation worked full-time in a manufacturing facility and literally rented a unit across the street in an industrial building to go and do his fab work on the side at night. So 12 hours in the factory, another 6 or 8 hours at night in the shop. And he did that until he could build the business to go and do it full time, until he could go and buy a building. And now they're in a brand new building and just added a whole second round of powder coating and fab guys.
30-some employees.
Huge operation.
It's a big operation.
But again, that's somebody who started with a passion, saw that there was a problem in the market. That's the business end of this. And then executed on it with absolute dedication. And that's what I think we see consistently across the 300 or 400 or 500 dealers we deal with over at Duramax Tuner is we get a chance to talk to everybody from small mom and pop operations. Shout out to guys like Alan Sweeten and Paul Schmidt, all the way up to the huge distributors and the biggest names in the industry like XDP, Alligator, Thoroughbred, Diesel Performance Products.
But the thing that's crazy here is whether I'm dealing with the sales guys at those bigger, mail order shops, because, we travel, we have to deal with them on a, weekly basis, yearly basis, monthly basis, what have you, or the smaller shops that I get to be on the phone with and that I see at the bigger events. They all have a drive, they all have a passion. And one of the questions that, like, personally I get a lot within, customers is, for the guys that think I'm more educated, I'm really not.
Nobody
where'd you go?
thinks that.
No, I fool some. But that, where'd you go to school for this? And it's like, well, I probably have a college degree paid up in the money I've wasted on a truck, like in parts. Like, I think that's a fact. It's a fact. But I was driven. I was motivated. It was a passion, and I still am passionate about it right now. But it's just fun. It's something that if you were to have asked, like me, or if someone were to have asked you and you were selling vacuum cleaners back in the day, do you think you'd be here doing something you're passionate about, something that you wake up and you're like, I'm going to go to work. Not a big deal. Not like, oh, fuck, this is what I have to do again.
I was just joking with my wife. This is the first job I've had in that I can remember where it's November and I have sick days left.
Yeah.
Like I have unused sick days in November. I've never done that before.
I've used one vacation day in 3 years.
Well, you're fucking twisted.
No, hey, you know what? But it's one of those things. Sick days too. I think I've used a half a sick day, and it was for my daughter, not for me.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where if you're driven and you're passionate and you're goal oriented, that's another big one. You can have.
There is setting some goals. I think if we were going to talk about like starting your own business, there's a lot of great places we could point you. There's some really, really good books out there around starting your own business. There's some good podcasts like Startup Podcasts from Gimlet Media, and some other kind of marketing and business stuff that you need to know. I think that's the one folly I have seen in diesel performance shops that didn't make it.
Well,
and I don't want to give you any scare stories here, but where we have seen is we've seen guys have a lot of passion and a lot of knowledge, and they want to do the best they can. However, they don't understand business. And if you're going to run a successful business, you have to understand how business works. So this is not a successful shop is not just a place to hang out and have fun and wouldn't it be cool? A successful shop has a goal. They have a budget. They have a metric. They understand that what makes a business last is not just the product or service they offer. It's all of the infrastructure that goes into supporting that. I don't know how many guys have damn near been put out of business because they can't just figure out to hire a girl to pay the bills on time.
Absolutely.
Little things like this, and I don't mean to be sexist to say a girl, it could be anybody, but I'm just saying,
you can't, basically to touch on that, you can't just start wrenching on a truck because you want to start a diesel shop, right? Just a shop in general.
Right.
Be the mechanic from 9 to 5, be the accountant and, do all the invoices and everything afterwards, and be the shop quoter and things like that. Starting off when it's a job here, job there to get your feet rolling, that's fine. But if things start to take off and, you start getting in that work and, word spreads about who you are and what your capabilities are, you're going to have to build that infrastructure, as you're pointing out. At the same time, again, not to pick or anything like that, but don't take on more than you can chew. Don't think like, oh, I'm going to take on this big build for $50,000 or $40,000 and it's going to go well, because I'll tell you right now, you will lose money on that. It will not be as easy as you think or you think you can execute in your mind. So the smaller jobs, the little stuff, getting your feet wet, building that foundation,
the ones that probably aren't as exciting.
They're not as exciting, but what it is it's knowledge.
Knowing the difference between how to make money with your business and then how to grow your business. Those are the things that you want to learn before you just go and rent a space and start wrenching on shops. So as we talk about becoming an owner and looking into business and understanding risk management and assets and all of the other fun terms, it does really help to have somebody in your life that you can kind of rely on as a mentor. If you're not hanging around your local diesel shop, find one. The good guys, the bad guys, the ugly guys, it doesn't matter. Be around the industry, understand some of like what happens behind the scenes before you start trying to be the scene, I guess is the best I could put it. But Chris, today we've talked a lot about Duramax. We've talked about fuel systems. We've talked about the Humvee. We're going to talk about something we never talk about on this show. I'm excited. Everything leading up to this, you prepped me. I went on some of the forums and got a little lowdown on what's about to go down. But who do we have today? Calibrated Power sponsors our special guest. And today we got a really special guest, a little bit out of our comfort zone here, Chris. I'm just going to call him 6'4" legend. Hell yeah. DPC contender, 6'4" legend, Facebook forum. Extraordinaire. Yeah. Good one. Thank you. We got JD Gleason on the line. JD, how the hell are you?
Doing well, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks for asking.
Doing good. I just want to point out, like I said, a minute ago. So JD Gleason, his name's been, in Diesel Power Magazine, things like that. I've read his name. I know who he is. I thought he was like a Ford guy in general. No, he's more like a 6'4" Ford guy. And I just probably scrolled through his Facebook and saw more pictures of 6'4s in the matter of a minute than I like I said, I had in a couple of years. Yeah. I'm pumped for this, dude. I am fucking so excited. So thanks for being on the show. We really do appreciate it.
Of course, no. It's an honor for sure.
JD, one of the things I had met him at Diesel Power Challenge this past year. He was there with Garrett Osane.
Okay, yeah.
Who was in. So if you guys listen to some of our previous episodes, you can go back and listen to any of the Garrett Osane episodes. I know I got a couple of good sound bites of JD saying something stupid.
Cool.
But
No doubt. No doubt.
I love that. I love it. I'm already excited.
It was a wild time, a wild group of guys. It was so much fun. I'll kick off the top of the show here. It was an impressive truck for what it was.
I don't want to. I don't know anything about 6.4. I'm just going to be very blunt, but I remember reading all of the magazine articles years ago when like Diesel Power magazine had Project Godzilla, and it was like this really gorgeous green crew short. And people were talking, as I'm looking at some of the show notes here, talking about different horsepowers that we'll get into.
Yeah.
And, the 6.4 was probably the first truck to put a tune on and make almost 600 horse. JD, would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And, that Godzilla was a truck that I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time around. I had my hands in it some, way back when. It was Mike Dillahaye's, a longtime friend of mine. But yeah, no, and that truck actually was one of the big inspirations for me to mess with mine. And, Mike Dillahaye, as far as performance goes, is, one of the OGs of the Ford industry for sure. He had a 7.3 back in, 2005 that was making more power than a lot of guys still make today. So
no, it was always cool. Every couple months they'd have another article in there. The Spartan tuners back in the day and nitrous. And I remember one of the articles that always sticks in my head. As new platforms come out, I always fall back onto this one snippet in the article, and it was, these engines are capable of handling X amount of power, but let's see if that holds true in a couple years after these trucks are seasoned and they have some miles on them. And I'll be honest, my knowledge and my understanding in the diesel world as a whole is 6.4s in stock form are not the most reliable. I always make comments and hear jokes about like cracked pistons and things like that. So it's just funny to read that and the 6.4 being the predecessor of the 6-liter, which honestly, if I was a Ford guy, I'd own a 6-liter. I like 6 liters. I like the 6.4. I don't have anything against either one of them, but it seems like the 6.4 has a worse off rap than the 6-liter did. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And, for me, I've been a Ford guy for a long time, and the 6.4, it's now in its, in its years to where, a lot of people can buy them. They're cheaper, that kind of thing. And so now is when you start seeing, when, people just beat the hell out of them and they have a bunch of problems, blow up, whatever. And the platform itself getting blamed. And the 6-liter went through that too. But now that, the 6-liter, all of its problems have become common. They're easily fixable. You know what to look out for. Right. People understand what their reputations are. People are coming back to them and they're like, no, I love 6-liters. They're easy to work on. They're, if it has this problem or this problem, you're going to, be able to fix it quick because it's a common deal.
Yeah.
And I think the 6.4 will get there. It's as far as like, the cracking pistons and stuff. The 6-liters actually had similar issues, but just because the different design of the injectors, it's not common rail. Cylinder pressures are way lower. It was way more common that 6.4s would crack pistons than 6-liters. So, but it is something you see in 6-liters every once in a while. The difference in 6.4s, where it came about in a much bigger way, I think a lot of it is because of the injection system and higher cylinder pressures, that kind of thing. But they meaning Molly, they actually had some casting flaws in their original batches of pistons that went out to international. So a lot of the earlier trucks had problems. A few of the later trucks did too. Seemed to be quite a bit less common on the job 2 and 3 trucks. But as far as the earlier ones go, it seemed like they were pretty hit or miss. So now the pistons have been updated. The casting flaw is, recognized or understood. So a lot of the trucks that, ended up having a piston problem, they never will again. So, and I think that's a common misconception too, is, if you were going to have problems with it, it was going to happen, stock tuned, deleted, 1,000 horse, whatever. But if you didn't have any problems, then, it didn't matter what power level you were at.
So I guess, we'll kind of dive into it. What are the common failures? If I was in the market and I was looking at a 6.4, I read the magazines, right? Know your name, whatever the case may be. I'm motivated to buy a 6.4. If you were to coach someone through buying one, what are the general, failure points? What is there to look out at?
The Job 1 trucks, a few of them would blow head gaskets somewhat similar to the 6 liters. There was an updated head gasket that they went to for the Job 2 and 3 trucks, and the Job 2 and 3 trucks didn't really seem to have those problems. So,
hold on. What the hell is a Job 1 or a Job 2?
Job 1 is probably 08, Job 2 is 09, and 3 is 10.
It doesn't go by necessarily the model year, but it goes by the build dates. And I can't even remember off the top of my head what the build dates were, but essentially, you could have like a 2010 Job 1. Those did exist.
Oh, wow.
There were also 2008 Job 3s. I'm not sure what the
is it like what shift, first, second, or third shift?
Yeah,
or
right.
so like
hey,
third
man,
shift
you bought a
just sucks.
second shift truck, man.
Yeah,
you
fucking
up.
idiot.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, like I said, the pistons, it was a casting flaw. So, some guys got screwed with it, some didn't.
I hear you.
But, as far as other common problems they had, they weren't really that bad.
Well, emissions equipment. I always hear that the emissions equipment wreaked havoc on everything built from 08 to 10. If I could just be clear, every diesel ever built from 2008 to 2010, the emissions equipment sucked on it. But I do hear that that's a major failure point.
100%. And with the DPFs and stuff, just like anything else, you'd get a lot of fuel dilution in the crankcase and stuff, and that isn't necessarily just true for Fords or anything, but the 6.4 was something else that suffered from that. But even then, it's not like diesel fuel takes out bearings or a bottom end or anything like that. It's just something to watch out for.
Right. Have you messed around with that? Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to ask, have you messed around with that? Didn't Bully Dog do a 6.4 DPF, an aftermarket one?
I saw that at SEMA, and I have heard of them, but I've never heard of anybody with one on their truck. ATS has actually tried to push like the high flow DPF, and the only one that I know of is on like their Ram Gen truck.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, it's on one of their trucks. I can't remember if it was the Dodge or the Ford, but one of their trucks has one of their high flow DPFs on it, and it actually, from what I understand, it works. But I've never looked into it.
Yeah, I've heard that one was in prototyping for a while. We talked to the guys over at Bully Dog. I believe we had them on the show to talk about their aftermarket DPF. Sounded really cool. I didn't know if it had started to take hold because I don't really watch your guys' niche of the industry very closely because, like we said, we're just not really big 6.4 guys, right? But as we are starting to move into the 6.7 performance over here, we're obviously starting to see a lot of crossover in just Ford guys in general. Guys who had a 6.4, now they have a 6.7. They love that Ford brand, and they're just looking to see what's the same, what's different. I'm wondering, what were some of the major changes besides just the leader and displacement change to go on from the 6.4s into the new Scorpion 6.7s?
Well, so like the 6.4s were designed and built by International, and the 6.7 platform is actually all done by Ford in-house, so they share almost nothing. I shouldn't even say almost nothing. They really do share nothing. Everything from the block to the crank to, everything, the design of the heads, the design of the engine, source for fuel system and all that stuff is completely different. Like the 6.4 is used all Siemens fuel system, and the 6.7's all Bosch. The 6.7s have reverse flow heads, basically the exhaust manifolds that are in the valley. They're a totally different animal from the 6.4s. The 6.7s are also probably the biggest difference is that the 6.7 is a main cap engine, whereas the 6.4 is a bed plate clad engine.
Okay, for our guys who are a little bit newer to engines and builds, what's the difference there? What would that mean to an end user?
So essentially, the way that the crank is held into the block is hugely different. So the bed plate that's in the 6.4 is I mean, as you're looking at it, it looks like it's the bottom half of the block. It's an entire cradle that holds the crank, and from a performance standpoint, it's seemingly better just because there's a lot more structure to it, a lot more stability. Trucks that make big horsepower, big torque, the crank tries to move around. Obviously, your cylinder pressures and all that are trying to push the crank out of the block. So engines like the 6.7, they just have caps that hold the crank into the block. So essentially, the bottom part of the block, you see the crank, and then you just bolt the cap over top of the crank to hold it in place. Not to say that that's not a good design or anything like that, or can't be improved upon. Obviously the Duramaxes are, for you guys, are a main cap engine as well. The big downfall for Fords is the aftermarket for Ford stuff really isn't there like it is for the Dodge and Cummins, because Ford's changed platforms so many times.
Right.
Right now, there's no billet main caps or girdles or anything like that available for the 6.7 Fords like there are the Duramaxes and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Is that one of the reasons that you're still dedicated to that 6.4 platform? Because that does really seem to be where you shine the most, is really around those 6.4s. Why stick with those? Why haven't you kind of just said, you know what, hey, the 6.4 was cool, but jump into the 6.7s now that they're available?
That's a lot of it. There's still a long way for the 6.7s to go before I think they'll be reliable at the power level the 6.4s can be. There's a truck actually that a good friend of mine, Nick Aldarelli in New Jersey. Hi, Nick. He's got a 6.7, and he actually is starting to push it now. It's becoming one of the fastest, steel-bodied Super Duties around. It went 949 at 149 a couple weeks ago at just over 6,000 pounds. So it's making right around a legitimate 1,400 horsepower, and it actually has lived quite a bit longer than I anticipated, for sure. Maybe not a few other guys, but he beat the crap out of that truck all year, and for a bunch of the season last year too in another truck. So, it's I don't know. The 6.4 has gotten such a bad name, and that's part of why I've kept pushing mine. And mine's it's for the most part, I haven't been able to kill it. I split the block in it now, what seems like forever ago. But it made 2,100 foot-pounds on fuel on big tires, and every time I pulled it out of the garage, I drove it sideways everywhere I went. So. Whatever. I can't really blame it for that.
I don't know how you fit. I've never killed it, and I split the block into the same sentence, but well played, sir.
I like your style.
The thing's been great to me. I've put more miles on a built motor built engines, whatever.
Yeah.
At big power numbers, 4 digits plus. And it's treated me very well. Aside from once, it only ever stranded me once, and I broke an input shaft in it, and I was out screwing around doing stuff I shouldn't have been spraying it. So, oh well.
So what's the setup of your current 6.4?
That poor truck has seen more nitrous on the street than any 5 vehicles ever should, for sure.
So what's the setup of the 6.4 that you currently have? Well, for the listeners, what's that look like?
So here's how it went. So I put the block in it. I was actually going to ATS's Gauntlet Challenge. We owned the dyno that we ran it outside at ATS's event. And at the time, I was considering putting my truck in the Gauntlet, depending on how much time we had. So I took it out of the garage. It was, it had been snowing, so it hadn't been out of the garage in a couple months. And I took it out and, did a good 50 to 130 pull in it or something, and it split the block. So at that time, it had some Elite Diesel, what they call the Max Power X's, It was a 66 VGT, that was designed and built by Elite, and then a Precision 88 as an atmosphere. At the time, it had some 90 overs in it from DDP, Elite dual pumps, all the supporting mods you could think of, I guess. And it made a little over 1,000 on fuel. I'd sprayed it to 1,500 on ATS's dyno, as you guys know.
Holy shit. Probably 2,000 anywhere else in the world.
As far as combined numbers go, as far as I know, I've got the highest forward number on their dyno ever, combined numbers. Tim Yon has put up a little bit more horsepower than me, but less torque. So anyway, so I split the block then, and at the time, a good friend of mine who you guys actually met at Diesel Power Challenge, he was on our team with Garrett. His name was Darren. He was pounding beating my door down to buy that turbo setup, and I was somewhat interested in switching to something else. So I sold him that turbo setup, and I'm in the process of rebuilding it now. So it will have some precision compounds in it. It's a Precision 6870, and then another 88 millimeter atmosphere. But it's actually out at Rudy's right now, and another good friend of mine who I used to work with here in Colorado, I actually got him a job at Rudy's. He is my fabrication guy, and he is undoubtedly one of the most talented people in this industry. Dedication beyond anything I've ever seen in my life. But he is helping me with that. So whenever I have time and he has time, I fly out there and, we spend a weekend working on it. And I'm actually really excited about the new setup. It should be something, pretty cool as far as just the quality of components and all that kind of stuff that, a lot of guys don't go to that extent. It'll be all titanium charge piping and, top to bottom, all hand done, one-off. As far as the piping goes, a lot of Nathaniel's blood, sweat, and tears. It's going to be cool.
That's awesome. Okay, cool, man. Well, I'm definitely excited to see it. I got a feeling one of the places I'm going to end up getting to see it is at the call-out. Now, I'm not talking about the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge. I'm talking about a call-out that spawned from the 08-10 Ford 6.4 Powerstroke. That is the official title of the Facebook group. I fucking hate names of Facebook groups. There is no good Facebook group name on earth. I hate them all. Your guys' is just as terrible as everyone else, so don't worry.
Dude, what an asshole.
Dude, we don't
No
have to be
argument.
shy. Yeah. And also, if you've been on this page, you know that JD has absolutely no feelings.
I'll never get accepted in. What kind of truck do you own? Not a fucking Ford.
I think I wrote Audi just to see if they would still approve it. No, I don't know what I wrote, but
I'll add you today. Don't worry.
No, I'm added, motherfucker. I did my homework.
I was talking to Chris.
All right, I'm going on right now. I'm down for a good time. So let's get into this. What's this call out? What is it?
Yeah, give us a little backstory here, JD. Without slandering anybody, this is going to get published to the general public.
And if you want to call them out on the podcast live, go for it. I'm cool with
be
that.
Be careful about your legal liabilities. We do not support
No.
or endorse anything you're saying. We are just having you on as a guest.
No, I'm not going to say anything about, somebody can't defend themselves here. But long story short, there was some guys pushing some tuning on that page, and there was some feedback from some of this guy's customers that wasn't very great. So I took it upon myself to make a comment about it, essentially to the effect of, get your shit together, otherwise, we don't want you on this page kind of deal. In so many words. It was way worse than that. I'm a terrible person, but anyway, so, a little trash talking ensued back and forth. and it got somewhat personal, and he decided that he wanted to call me out, for whatever, whatever that was worth. We agreed upon a DPC style showdown, something with, dyno drag, sled pull, make it a little interesting. And he added that he wanted me to bring 3 competitors with me. And he said that he would bring 3 other guys as well. So there's going to be essentially 2 teams of 4 of us going head-to-head in Colorado. And it's, originally it kind of started off as a call-out, but it's, as more and more details have emerged from it, there's actually an event going on that we will basically be competing at. And this event is called the High Plains Diesel Shootout. It's at Pueblo Motorsports Park in Colorado here in Pueblo, May 18th and 19th of 2019. Matthew Fetty is putting on the event, and, for a lot of you guys that, may recognize that name or may not, Team Punisher is who he's associated with. He's got a little Pro Mod 6-liter Ford. It's like a 60s body style Ford with a blown 6-liter in it. It's actually a very cool truck.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's got a ton of work into it, and they're getting it dialed in, and it's starting to go faster. Should be pretty cool.
I love it, man. Well, I'm really excited for it. I'm sure after this airs, you guys are going to get all 4 of our listeners to go onto the group and try to request on so that they can see this. If you miss drama on Facebook and a lot of shit talking between what's clearly a bunch of guys who enjoy themselves, jump on. It is... I do look for these, by the way. This is like my guilty pleasure. I don't watch reality TV. I read Facebook comments.
No, and he disrupts the whole office in the mix. He's like, did you read on this forum what happened? And I'm like, Paul, I have a fucking life. I'm not on the Facebook forum. And that's his life. He's very passionate about reading other people's bullshit.
I get paid to do it. So anyways, it was a lot of fun to read some of this shit. But yeah, no, you guys definitely should check it out. I know we're going to be following along at the event. That comes down to right around UCC, right? It's like the weekend before or the weekend after?
I think it's a couple weekends after.
After. Okay, cool. Because if it's there, man, I might have to make it out. We might have to see this one live. I did want to give you a chance here. Can you hear me?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I did want to give you a chance here. Generally, when we have an expert on for different categories, we like to give you a couple of examples. Chris and I pretend like we're the customer, and we let you make some just kind of general recommendations.
Yeah.
We didn't write super detailed biographies on these.
No.
There's just a couple bullet points.
Sure.
Which is my note to Chris to make something up.
He's giving me the seductive look.
You love it. I will kick things off. Okay, so JD, I am a towing customer. I'm heavy towing, probably a camper, back and forth across the country. Hey, man, I'm an old guy. I'm on a budget, which is what every old guy has ever told me. And I'm looking to get 500 to 600 horsepower out of my 6.4. What do I need to do?
Your best bet would be a good tune. I've been unbelievably happy with Gearhead tuning. As far as the Ford stuff goes, their tuning is the cleanest and seemingly the smoothest. It's what I run in all the trucks that I build, all the stuff that I work on. It's in my fiance's truck, my truck. Anything that I've ever needed, he's been more than happy to accommodate for me, and I've always appreciated that. But for big tow and heavy, a turbo upgrade is always what a 6.4 wants. Like a drop-in from Elite Diesel, just an atmosphere that has had a little work done to it, is cheap. You're under $1,500 for a drop-in turbo, and they'll make $650 on totally stock fuel with just a tune and an atmosphere turbo. So put one of those in it and turn it down, and you've got 500 to 600.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice and easy, man. Awesome. Chris, you got the next one.
Yeah, I'm going to push the envelope. I went on Craigslist, and I found a one-owner, light used, 150,000-mile truck. It's an 09, and I want 800 horse out of it. I tow, maybe 4 times a year. I'm going to take the truck to the drag strip. Want to hang out with my friends and beat up on some ricers.
Sure. Also simple. This is my best buddy Justin had a truck with this exact setup in it. A set of dual fuelers, a low pressure fuel system, some 60 over injectors, and Elite. They call them the high power juniors. It's a 59 and a 76 stock appearing setup. They make right at 800 on fuel. Put some nitrous to them, and they'll make 1100 plus all day long. It's a blast to drive. It lights instantly. It runs cool. You can tow whatever you want with it, and they love getting beat at that power level. That's like their favorite thing ever.
Now, this is what are we doing on transmission, engine? Are those stock? Like, what does that look like? Am I gonna have to budget for that, or?
Honestly, you can run a stock trans at 800 horse, and it's a gamble. With good trans tuning, it'll live for quite a while. It will shock you. It really will. My truck, I probably made, 100 passes, 150 passes at, between 700 and 800 horse on a totally stock transmission. And I ended up swapping it out for a built one because I was entering in Diesel Power Challenge. They'll live. Otherwise, you can plan for mild to wild for the trans. You can get a decent rebuilt trans with a good converter for, $4,500, or you can go full billet and go nuts for $8,000. There's options either way. The thing with Fords though is we're handicapped because we're heavy. Fords are like the fat kid of the group.
Yeah, for sure.
They always have been, and that's hard on transmissions. So.
Wow. Now, at 800 horse, the stock long block. Anything there? Like, what does that look like?
No, it all goes back to piston issues. If it's a factory long block, at 150K, chances are you're probably not going to run into a cracked piston. Otherwise, you would have already.
Well.
And if you hadn't, then you're good to go. It's any newer diesel that makes, the power that they do, the torque that they do, instant throttle response, that kind of thing. The bearings don't live nearly as long as they used to. I get 7.3 guys all the time. Oh, well, my shit, lives to 400,000 miles and it's hardly broke in. Well, your shit also makes 200 horsepower and, doesn't make any torque. That's how this whole thing works.
Yeah.
So, if you've ever driven a 6.4 with a tune or any other power adders, the throttle response is immediate. And that's what kills bottom ends and bearings. But as far as, the strength of the bottom end, they will hold 800 all day long. It's pretty rare that you see bent rods or anything like that under 1,000 horse. It does happen every once in a while. You get fluke stuff that goes on, but it's not the norm for sure. Like I was telling you about Justin's truck, it trapped 121 and some change with one stage to it on 35-inch tires at like 8,650 pounds at 6,000 feet, which calculates to like 1,033 horse. And that was a totally stock bottom end, stock rods, stock pistons that, never skipped a beat.
That's some straight up, 5.9 Cummins shit that you're telling me right now.
Get out of here.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
is.
And, and at the same time, like a lot of the guys that make 1,000 horse, their trucks don't make a ton of torque. A lot of guys go, the single route or some big-ass compounds to get there. We're talking stock appearing turbos here. So at 1,000 horse, it's making 2,000 foot-pounds of torque.
Oh, yeah.
No problem.
Right.
And that's how they are. 6.4s are torque monsters.
Well, how about taking one out to the max? What's the ultimate DPC build?
It's tough to say.
Because you've been involved in two now. So
Garrett's What's that?
Well, I said you've been involved in 2 DPCs now, so like I'm kind of wondering, like, how would you change it from Garrett's build-up?
Honestly, like Garrett's build or like mine was very similar to Garrett's. Just my atmosphere was a little bit bigger. Between those 2 builds, that's, really kind of an ideal setup. You saw how well it performed, how that truck responded. We just had a problem in the drags where the pump and the transmission exploded.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where we should have bought one of David at Red Diamond's new roller bearing pumps for it. But it was just one of those things where it wasn't broke, so we didn't fix it. And it ended up, as far as I'm concerned, costing us the competition.
Yeah, honestly, you guys were had to be way. I didn't see the points, obviously, like all the way through, but like you guys had to be way out in front on it. He was doing so well.
Yeah, originally we were not to take anything away from Cody either, but
Cody
yeah, we were for sure in the hunt for first, and taking us out of the drag really killed us. Especially the testing that we did up, the couple weeks before DPC, the drags, we were ready to go head-to-head with any truck there.
Right.
So, but, like I said, something that spools fast is going to be, a contender in Diesel Power Challenge. It's not an all-out power thing necessarily, but a truck that you can drive that's responsive and how it reacts is going to beat power almost every time.
Yeah, and avoiding cones. I hear you.
Yeah. Little known fact, Garrett got sent a traffic cone costume for Halloween, and I actually never got to see him in it. But it was a pretty good time.
Everybody, it wasn't even just Garrett, man. Everybody, you could not go through that course over 5 miles an hour and not crush cones. It was rough. It was so
mod.
rough. Yeah.
Driver mod.
Check. Awesome, man.
It looked pretty tight for sure.
Yeah, it was fucking. I was so glad I didn't have to drive, and seeing the cops run around the course that day, that was probably my favorite part of it.
Let's face it, Paul. You couldn't even do it in your own fucking vehicle with no trailer.
Come on, quit playing,
dude. You're terrible.
I get home.
Gets home.
I get home with Uber. Yeah, to leave me alone. All right, man. JD, I appreciate you coming on and talking 6.4s. Listeners, for all you guys who asked us to talk about 6.4s, and I wrote back rude responses, I'm sorry, we finally did it. Listeners, the guys who called out and said, hey, can you have on JD Gleason to talk about this Facebook call out going on? I finally did it. Leave me alone about 6.4s. I'm done. This is checked off the list.
Dude, I'm sold. I want one.
Next year, we'll talk about them again.
I want one.
I'm just joking. No, it was a lot of fun. We always appreciate the messages, even from you 6.4 guys. please keep sending them in. We'd love to talk to you guys more about it. JD, anybody you want to give a final shout out to here?
Not necessarily, I guess. Let's reconvene, later in the season, and we'll see how the season goes and all that for 4s and 6.4s, and maybe even talk to you at the call-out event.
I love it. I love it, man.
We'll talk to you. We're going to schedule another, whatever this is, another powwow on 6.4. That's when we're going to do it.
Oh, on June 4th.
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
I like that.
Got it. Love it.
That's the National 6.4
Please do.
Day.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for listening. This has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Hemke.
Have a great night.
The Diesel Performance Podcast is brought to you by Calibrated Power Solutions, home of DuramaxTuner.com. Calibrated Power develops emissions-equipped calibrations for a wide variety of diesel powertrains, including Duramax, Cummins, Powerstroke, John Deere, Case, New Holland, and many more. For more information and the best customer service in the industry, check out calibratedpower.com or call 815-568-7920. That's 815-568-7920. If you'd like to contact the podcast, send us a message through Facebook or email Paul at DuramaxTuner.com or Chris at CEHMKE@DuramaxTuner.com. Hey, thanks for listening. Your feedback is appreciated. Please rate and review us on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and by all means, let us know if you have any ideas for a podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
I'm not sure what the
Is it like what shift, first, second, or third
differentiator
shift?
was.
Yeah,
Or
right.
so like
Hey
third
man,
shift
you
just
bought a
sucks.
second shift truck, man.
Yeah,
you
you
fucked
fucking
up.
idiot. Yeah.
right.